So my leadership journey began, gosh, I don't remember the year, but it was probably 1998. And I had the privilege, the honor, and the challenge of being a third shift overnight supervisor in a call center. It's my first official leadership role. We had 12, maybe 13 people, and it was fun. It was 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. Sunday through Thursday. Now, I was 22 at the time. I probably had no business being a leader, but I had somebody who saw something in me, and I knew I wanted to lead. Now, I'll admit fully at that time, I was focused on how do I grow in my career? How do I make more money? How do I take care of me? And I didn't really appreciate what leadership was or how to lead. But there are moments in your life where things click. And for me, it all started with having a leader that cared about me. And that's a moment where everything shifted. And it happened in a very dark room, as my mentor would say, at dark 30 in the morning before the sun was up. And I had just come off of the third shift supervisory role and moved into an assistant manager role in the call center. So I did third shift for about a year. That was my first time to really learn how to lead. And I was still learning, self-serving. I was interested in what was next for me. I loved serving others. That was never a question. But I didn't know how to be a leader. Specifically, I didn't know what servant leadership was. Now, I was incredibly blessed to be at an organization that not only made leadership a priority, but made servant leadership a priority. I was working for Total Solutions, which was a subsidiary of Total System or Synovus Financial. And Jimmy Blanchard was the CEO. And it was about servant leadership. It was about leadership. So that moment in my life where leadership shifted, where it really started to come into focus, was when I became an assistant supervisor in the call center. We had 160, 180 agents. And my mentor was a gentleman by the name of Colonel Greg Camp. Now, Colonel Camp was retired. Everyone called him Greg. But there are things that I do today that still come from what Greg taught me 28 years ago. The great aha for me, the unlock happened in that dark morning, not just to understanding the weight of leadership, not just to understanding what leadership is, but to its purpose. Now, Colonel Camp, Greg, was retired. He had retired from the Army. He was a West Pointer, Vietnam veteran. He had been the chief of staff at Fort Benning, Georgia. Tremendously successful career. I'm guessing Greg was in his early to mid 50s at this point. Incredibly people-centric, incredibly people-forward, very direct. You never questioned where you stood with Greg, but you knew that he had your back. And so what my first role or my first real opportunity to start to learn what servant leadership really meant was when Greg started a book club. And that book club was at dark 30 or 6:30 in the morning. And our official shifts were 8:30 to 5:30, whatever it was, in my role as the assistant call center manager. So when I'd been a team supervisor, I reported into the assistant call center manager. And then there was an opportunity and I was promoted into the assistant call center manager role. So my hours shifted from being 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. Sunday through Thursday to Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30. Except on Tuesdays when we had book club at dark 30. And this club was very simple, Greg would choose a book and we would read and discuss. I still use that same format today. One of the tools that I took from Greg actually was, this is a really simple format and we learn from each other. And I still do it. The book we studied first was Leadership by the Book by Ken Blanchard, Bill Hybel, Phil Hodges. And this book was understanding servant leadership through the eyes and lens and examples of Jesus Christ as a leader and mirroring service as a leader. And it was the first exposure I had to leadership is service in my entire life. Like it was not about leading others. It was about serving others. And this book club wasn't about reading for fun. And it wasn't just about reading for growth. It was about learning and studying and teaching each other to become better leaders for our people. And I remember this being so profound because I'm in this room. I'm 22 years old. There's a gentleman in the room who was head of our training, who was retired Sergeant Major Willie Wells. There was another gentleman who was retired Light Colonel. There were 2 or 3 other professionals that were non-military that were, far senior of this snot-nosed 22-year-old punk. And we were talking about leadership, and I was soaking it up. I was also contributing, and it was the first time I was exposed to learning is teaching. Teaching is learning. That when you teach something, when you share what your perspective about something is, you have an opportunity to learn. And it was so powerful. There was no rank. There was no opinion that mattered more. Greg's most certainly included. There was a conversation. What did this mean to you? What did you take from this? How did this land? How will you apply these things? This was one of those seminal moments where I went, oh, leadership isn't about me. Leadership is about serving. It's about taking care of. It's about empowering other people. Now, Greg, as I said, he was one of those individuals that for me was larger than life. I would say that he was my very first professional mentor. He's a person that, unfortunately, I haven't been as good at staying in touch over the last number of years. But one of those ripple effect people that has fundamentally shaped my life, has fundamentally changed how I do things. For those that I've worked with over the last 25, 26, 27 years, everybody knows, well, those that I've worked with know that when I send an email, my name is always with the lowercase d. And that's a really simple but very intentional element. And the reason I do that is it actually comes from Greg. Greg signed his name with a lowercase d, and I asked him, Greg, why do you sign your name with a lowercase d? And he shared with me, he said, Dusty, I signed my name with a lowercase g, not because I'm lazy and not because I'm in a hurry. It's a subtle reminder when I do this that I'm a lowercase person to the other person that I serve. And that was one of those like, whoa moments for me. That was one of those like, holy smokes, this person who is accomplished in, all these things cares about me. He serves me. I'm a 22-year-old snot-nosed punk, just finishing college. Why does he do this? And I went, well, I can do that. So I stole that. And that probably was one of those things too, where I started assembling tools and things from people I like and said, oh, that's really good. Let me do some of that. Which frankly is probably some of the genesis of this podcast today. Like every episode, every guest, every opportunity we have to have a conversation, there's a tool, there's a toolbox, there's a skill that we can steal or that we can put in our own toolbox in our journey to service and support others. I've often used the term, I love R&D. And when people hear that, they often think, I mean, research and development, something big and formal and powerful. Now, that's not what I mean at all. What I mean by R&D is rip off and duplicate. It is far better to take someone else's learnings and hard-won experience and the wisdom that they've gathered through life experiences, the tools that they've created, and put them in your own tool belt if it's appropriate. Like, so rip off and duplicate. Hey, you've learned this. And when people share these gifts with you, how can I use it? How can I put it to use in a way that's meaningful, impactful for me? And that's little d. I signed my signature on my emails today with a lowercase d because of what Greg taught me about leadership. It's really kind of, as I reflect out loud about that, and that's not something I've thought about in years and years. I've had conversations with people over the years where they'll say, hey, Dusty, this isn't grammatically correct. I remember going round and round with my former VP of marketing, and he would tell me, Jake Rudy, he would say, Dusty, it's not grammatically correct. I know why you do it. You've explained it, but man, it just makes my skin crawl. And I went, that's okay. Because every time you see it and every time it drives you crazy, you'll know why I do it. There's a reason behind these things. So that book club, that mentor, was when I was introduced to the principles of serving others through leadership. And Greg further reinforced that to me when I did, right, frankly, what at that point was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my career, which was resign from that position. Fast forward another year, I've been promoted to the call center manager role. So now I have 200 agents in the call center. We run 24/7. I'm 23 years old. Again, no business probably being in that role, but I had a mentor that saw something in me, and I had the ability to work hard, the grit, the determination. And what Greg did when I screwed my courage to the sticking place and I went and took him the letter saying that I was resigning because I had an opportunity I couldn't refuse. I had an opportunity to go start a call center for an organization called AAA, which I knew nothing about, and to move a call center from Charlotte, North Carolina to Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, and be the person that was hired to do it, the only person in the town that would be making the move. So I would get to hire everyone. I would have the opportunity to create the culture, install the culture, do all these things at 23 years old. And I was terrified of resigning because Greg had entrusted me. He had invested in me. He had given me these gifts. And I felt guilty. I felt this tremendous sense of guilt as I walked into Greg's office with this letter that I had agonized over word for word and every comma, every period. Like, how do I show genuine appreciation? How do I say it's not you, it's not the company? I'm chasing something. I'm running to something. I'm not running from something, which is a whole nother powerful mental model to talk about and unpack in future episodes. But I walked in, I gave Greg this letter, and he did the most remarkable thing. He said, Dusty, I knew this was going to happen. I knew that you would leave, whether it was to go to another opportunity in this company or whether it was to go to another opportunity outside of this company. You see, Dusty, one of the great things about being a leader in the Army was I always knew that the soldiers who were entrusted to my care were only mine to serve for a few years. And it was not my job to squeeze as much as I could out of them, but it was my job to pour into them and prepare them for their next role. You see, I could squeeze out of them. Yes, we're going to get results. That was kind of the minimum price. That was the minimum standard. That was the entry price to the game. We must deliver the results. We must achieve the mission. But you see, I was entrusted with their care for a few years, and I always knew they were going to leave. So I'm not surprised that you're leaving. I don't take it personally. I wish there was an opportunity for you to stay here. I wish there were an opportunity for you to do it here. But you have an opportunity, and you have to go chase it. You have to do this and follow your calling. You have to follow where God is calling you. And Greg was a person of faith. And so this moment of clarity was that leadership isn't about title or power. It's about a responsibility to others. And for me, it was an understanding that resignation wasn't a retreat. It was a commitment to the future. It was embracing a new opportunity to learn, to lead differently, to lead better. I learned so many things from Colonel Camp over the years. I learned so much about how to be a leader, about how to serve others. And it really started me on this journey of, and awoken within me, my own personal mission statement to empower success in others. There's so many gifts, and there's so many lessons, and there's so many opportunities that I have been blessed with that all come from one person seeing something in me that I didn't see and handing me a model and a framework that enabled me to do what I wanted to do, which was help other people. I just didn't know how. And it's turned into just a lifelong passion, a pervasive passion, which is why we're having a podcast. It's why the Arcus Group was founded. It's why over the years I've been able to help other people. Now, one of the great ahas I've had over the years and challenges, when people talk about servant leadership, they go, oh, that's soft leadership. Oh, that's holding hands and kumbaya by the fireplace. And no, it's not that at all. It's service of others. And sometimes that means enabling them to do what they need to do outside of your own organization because they're not able to meet that minimum expectation. They're not able to achieve the mission. And one of the first, I wouldn't say the first, one of my favorite leadership books is The Leadership Secrets of Colin Powell. I had the opportunity to see him speak once or twice and was just blown away by him, by his ability to lead, by his ability to create influence. And he has so many quotes. But this one that comes back to servant leadership for me, and I would say he was certainly a servant leader. The day soldiers stop bringing you their promises is the day you stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them or concluded that you do not care. In either case is a failure in leadership. And I contrast that, or I also add to that one of his other favorite quotes that I have this, I actually literally have this printed on my desk and I've had it for years. It says, being responsible sometimes means pissing people off. And you, as a servant leader, doesn't mean that you are holding hands and warm, soft, and fuzzy. It means you're saying what needs to be said to serve another person. I am deeply grateful and appreciative and thankful to Greg for how he took me under his wing, how he introduced frameworks and concepts to me about leadership, and how he gave me tools and then demonstrated it through his behaviors of what it meant. The fears I had when I walked in his office to give him a resignation letter, and his response was life-changing. The opportunity to learn from and with other leaders that were well above my capability grade, not my pay grade, my capability grade, was life-changing. This was the day everything changed. This was the relationship that changed everything. So here's what I want you to take away from this. As we have guests on the show or as we have conversations, we're going to uncover tools. We're going to give frameworks. We're going to take these lessons, these stories, these moments that created a divergent course and unpack those so that we can learn from them, so that we can understand, hey, other people have been down this path before, and here's what we can learn. I probably haven't shared that story about Greg ever, but I learned from that. And it was an incredible gift to me, and it was an incredible gift for me. And if I can, by telling that story, have an impact on one person, it's amazing. Here's what I learned from Greg. Leadership is a daily choice to serve, to show up, to take responsibility. Leadership is not about you. Period. Full stop. Leadership is about enabling and empowering success in others. And when you do that, and when you do that well, opportunities will follow. Great leaders read, they reflect, they never stop growing, and they sharpen each other. All of these philosophies, all of these things that I do today, these things that I believe, came from one person. I am so grateful to him for having had the desire, the vision, and the mission to serve others. He saw something in me that I didn't know existed. He planted within me seeds that would forever change my life. And he gave me the greatest gift of all time for me, not for him. If this resonated with you at all, I'd love to hear your leadership wake-up moment. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, shoot me an email, dusty@arcusgroup.com. I would love to learn where your moments happened, where those inflection points occurred. Share the story, because keeping that story inside is like buying a gift and never giving it. If this resonates with you, share the episode with someone navigating a leadership pivot. I had to get comfortable even sharing these types of stories because in my mind, who the heck would want to hear me talk? But as I've shared this today, I think, again, I'm the one who's received the gift, because as I've shared this story, I'm reminded of how impactful one person's belief, one person's behaviors, one person's investment made in my life. Thank you, Colonel Camp. And thank you, audience. This is Leadership Unlocked. If today's episode gave you something to think about, something to apply, then there's more where that came from. Head over to arcusgroup.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's where we share tools, insights, and our leadership frameworks to help you lead with more clarity, more alignment, and more impact. No fluff, just what helps you lead better. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on Leadership Unlocked.